I was popular as a kid because I played football.
Yeah.
And I got this reputation around the estate. From a very young age, I was kind of the odd one out. I had this gift of football that no one ever taught me.
Aluko, shooting chance perhaps, and scores!
I realised pretty quickly that I was, better than a lot of the boys. My mum was always very like, do your thing. My mum was a bit of a rock star, to be honest. She was a bit of a legend. Could pray at anywhere,
Any point,
you
yeah.
know.
I love it, yeah.
Pray on a plane, pray on the way to a plane, pray just before a meeting.
I feel that God will meet you where you are.
For real,
and as you said, you weren't able to go to church, but you were able to still implement your faith into what you were doing.
Absolutely.
And he met you where you are.
When I look back, I go, imagine if I was fearless for longer. I would have.
How do you do that? Is there a process?
I think that handling fear is being able to say, what's the worst that can happen? When people disagree, they think they can attack your very essence of who you are, your race, my gender. But the lines have become really blurred.
Yeah.
Although it's hard to read some of the stuff, it doesn't really get into the depths of my soul because there's something much deeper. I'm rooted in something that makes me feel like a queen.
Have you been to therapy before?
So my issue with therapy...
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Sharnade. I'm a psychotherapist. Thank you for joining me in today's episode. If you are new here, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with anyone who you know needs to hear these conversations. If you're looking for a therapist or you want to join my community, I will leave everything in the description bar. Thank you for joining me and my community in making wellness a daily practice. Let's get straight into the episode. Eniola, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good today. I'm got a busy weekend ahead. So yeah, but I'm happy to be here. I've been looking forward to having this conversation with you.
Thank you for coming. I really do appreciate you being here because from when I was doing research, you don't do many interviews, so I appreciate you being here today.
Yeah.
How do you feel with talking about mental health? Is this something you've spoken about before?
I don't tend to speak on this topic, but I think it's important to do so. And I think it's important to talk about experiences, but also how mental health tools get you through difficult experiences. I think a lot of the time mental health is quite a negative conversation, obviously, and it's not a nice thing if it's bad mental health. But I think that the other side of mental health is, how you grow from difficult experiences and the tools that come out of that, are mental health tools. So resilience, confidence, positive self-talk. These are all tools that I think, we can get better at using, because I think, you will have difficult experiences in life. It's then how you deal with those experiences. So, I'm open to talking about that because that's what life is about. Being able to navigate good and bad experiences.
Definitely, and I feel like right now we're at a stage in life, in the world, where many people are speaking about mental health, going to therapy, what they've learned from their therapist. So we're learning a lot more, and more people are talking about their mental health and their well-being.
Yeah, and I think it's a positive thing, because I think ultimately for a long time people were going through stuff in silence. People didn't really know how to deal with experiences, and felt alone. And so when you're able to talk about your feelings and articulate how you feel, that's the only way someone can help you. That's the only way another person can say, oh my God, I felt exactly the same way. So I think the openness with which, people are talking about mental health, having platforms like this to openly have people in the public eye talking about mental health, I think it normalizes it. But I'm also really excited about talking about the tools, like the practical side of it. Because I think, being able to say, okay, I I have a problem, I feel scared, I feel depressed, or I feel anxious, is one thing. The other thing is like, okay, so how do we deal with that? You know, is it therapy? Is it doing more fitness? Is it finding a hobby? Is it, you know, there's so many different tools that I think we need to continue to talk about, from young people all the way through to adults. And that's the side of it I think is really important.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because I feel like there could be a lot of theory, there could be a lot of what is depression, the signs, the symptoms, but then we need the practical tools on how to overcome and, you know, feel better within ourselves, whether that's therapy or whether that's other practical tools. Okay, so when you first got signed to your football team, how old were you and what was that like back then?
So I grew up in Birmingham and I started playing at a very young age, sort of 4 or 5. And I grew up around a lot of boys. There was no other girls playing football in the 90s when I was growing up. So, you know, from a very young age, I was kind of the odd one out. I had this gift of football that no one ever taught me. And, you know, I realised pretty quickly that I was, you know, better than a lot of the boys on my estate. And I got quite a reputation. You know, I was the girl that can play football. And, you know, that was when, you know, we used to knock on each other's doors, no mobile phones. And we used to play out from, you know, end of school through to when it was dark. So that was kind of how I started. And then obviously through the age groups, I was playing in school, and it was only really until probably 14 that I was scouted, and scouted by Birmingham. And that was really the first kind of organised football team that I was part of. And then from there I got scouted for the England youth groups. So, you know, it was a hobby for a long time and a skill and a gift. And I didn't grow up ever thinking I'd be a professional footballer. It just wasn't, you know, available to me. So, you know, I went to school, did well in school, you know, went to uni. And then I had to kind of go to America to become a professional because there was no league here. And so my first professional contract was actually in America after I finished uni.
That must have been incredible. Age 4 or 5, you got this gift, you got this talent, you love playing football, and people could see your gift and your talent. What was that like, being the only girl around boys, just being so gifted at a game such as football?
Yeah, I think at the time, you know, I didn't really think about it. You know, it wasn't like I wasn't really aware of my difference because the boys on the estate made me feel very welcome. And I think that kind of set the tone for the rest of my life because you know, I'm very comfortable, not very comfortable, but I'm okay in spaces where I'm the odd one out. And I think that started off from when I was young. I was never really around girls. I was always around boys. And so when I came to, like, you know, be on boards or be the first, you know, female pundit on Match of the Day, it was an all boys club as well. And I was like, cool, I can do this. You know, it was scary and it, you know, it's a bit daunting. But I think that started when I was young, that ability to just, you know, perform and be myself, even though I was different.
Okay. And I know you mentioned in the book about, you know, being friends with boys and they couldn't pronounce your name, right? And they called you Eddie. They called you Eddie. Talk about that and what that was like.
Well, I insisted actually that the boys called me Eddie.
Yeah.
So I was, you know, obviously I was popular as a kid because I played football.
Yeah.
And I got this reputation around the estate of, the girl that plays football. And my brother that's 2 years younger than me, he plays as well. He's a professional now, and he was very good as well. And I just wanted to be part of them. Like, I wanted to be part of their group.
Yeah.
So I said, oh, can you call me Eddie? And, I guess we've all been through this where, for those of us, certainly Africans, who grew up here, our names get butchered, man.
Yeah.
Like, seriously butchered. So at some point, we've either been like, listen, we just simplify our names, or we change our names in some instances. So maybe it was a bit of that as well, where I just felt like Eni wasn't really going to fly. So I wanted to be one of the boys, and it was just easier to say.
Did you have any sisters? Did you grow up with any?
No, I do have sisters
you
now,
have sisters? Okay.
but they are much younger than me.
Okay.
So, so I grew up with my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, and then it wasn't until later that my sisters came along.
Okay.
So my sisters are 24 and 23. So yeah, they're the next generation after me.
And what was it like growing up in your home? So I know I don't want to spoil the book, but from reading the book, you grew up mainly with your mum being at home, right?
Yes.
Because your dad was back in Nigeria.
Yes.
What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a sort of traditional single parent story, really. Not that dissimilar to other people, where my mom worked really hard. She came to England very young. She came to England with me pregnant, and she had me in Nigeria, and then she came to England when I was 1 with her mother, and yeah, worked really hard. Went into nursing, worked for the NHS. Just grafted basically to support her children, and it wasn't easy for her at all. And then she moved from nursing into pharmaceutical sales, did pretty well with that, and then started her own business. So from a young age, I've sort of seen my mom just have to really work hard, but also be quite entrepreneurial. And she's always, I think as a Nigerian mom, she's very liberal. She's quite open. And so growing up in the 90s, where women's football wasn't really a thing, I would have expected my mom to have been like, this football thing that you're doing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
But she wasn't.
Okay.
She was completely open to me just expressing my skill and playing. And I'm really thankful for that, because when I talk to other young girls who are from cultured backgrounds, it's their dads don't like it, or that, their culture kind of restricts them. Whereas my mom was always very like, do your thing. She was quite particular about education, but I'm glad about that too, because it meant that I was able to kind of do both. So yeah, my mom was a bit of a rock star, to be honest. She's a bit of a legend. I think she exemplifies a lot of what is just brilliant about immigrants in this country, to be honest. Just that hard-working ability to get it done, support your children, and then provide a platform for them to go on to do great things.
And how did that shape who you are as a woman today, having such a supportive mum, especially with you wanting to be a footballer and played football? How did that shape who you are? Yeah,
it's shaped everything, really. I mean, my mum's also, a strong person of faith. She's a strong Christian. So from a young age, we went to church. She embedded scripture into us in a way that, again, it wasn't like forceful. It was just it was like planting seeds. And those seeds, now that we've grown and gone off and, have our own lives, have become trees within us. And so we can deal with different things, without necessarily even having to talk to my mom. I recall those scriptures and that wisdom that's been instilled into us. So I'm really grateful for that because, again, everybody's going to have their own individual challenges in life. And it's how you deal with them. And for me, my faith has really helped me. And my mom planted those seeds early. And to be honest, like, because of football, I couldn't always go to church.
Okay.
So it was then about, it almost then focused more on the relationship with God, your personal relationship with God, praying in the car, praying
on
like,
the way to
it doesn't really matter, right? So that was actually more of a focus than, the routine of going to church every Sunday. And I'm grateful for that too, because again, that's life. Like you should be praying. You could pray at anywhere.
Any point, I love it. Yeah.
Pray on a plane. Pray on the way to a plane. Pray just before a meeting. Like, so that kind of flexibility within faith and that knowledge of like it's about your internal relationship. I think that was something that I learned from my mom as well.
Speaking on faith, I feel that God will meet you where you are.
And
as you said, you weren't able to go to church, but whether it's in the car, whether it's before a football match, you were able to still implement your faith into what you were doing.
Absolutely.
And he met you where you are in that moment.
Absolutely. And again, I don't know if that's always been something that's been taught to us as Christians. I think there's a big focus on obviously going to church, which is important, and fellowship. But what's even more important is that sort of, that very direct relationship with God wherever you are. And it's not less powerful for that. So I'm very grateful for that. And my mom very much embodies that for sure.
Yeah, so it's like, as you said, you represented a tree. So your mum was planting the seeds within you, and then when you were out and you were on your journeys, on your travels, it still remained.
That's it.
And you just blossomed.
It just blossomed. It really blossomed, and even now, and I think, I'm one of 5 children, right? So we will all have our own different journeys. With our faith, but the seed is in all of us, so really it will grow at whatever point
that it needs to.
Yeah. My little brother's 16, and he recently said to my mum, "I want to be baptized." Wow. She didn't force him. She didn't. He said it. Now who knows where that came from? That could have been a seed that she planted at 8 years old, but we don't know, right? But he internally said, "No, I want to be baptized." So at 16, I didn't say that. I was baptized, I think, much earlier. But it doesn't really matter. I think it's about the seeds that we're planting in our children that become really rooted trees that then allow us to deal with the things that we go through in life.
Talk about the highs and lows of your career as a footballer. What was that like for you, being in such a fast-paced, high-performance role? What was that like?
Yeah, so for me, I'm the kind of person that I'm very hard on myself. I'm an achiever, so I'm always trying to I'm always trying to achieve. I'm always trying to do the best I can, and that's kind of a double-edged sword, because you achieve a lot, but when you fail, it hits you really hard. So I had a real issue with failure. I felt like it would define me. I couldn't really deal with failure for a long time in my career.
Were there any points in your career where you felt like a failure and you struggled?
Yeah, so when I was at Chelsea for 7 years, and that period was probably the most successful. Well, that period at Chelsea for the Chelsea women was when the success started.
And how old were you then?
I was 24, 23 to sort of 28.
Mm-hmm.
23 to sort of 29, yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, I was the main striker. Like, so there was a lot of pressure on me to score goals. There's a lot of pressure on me to, like, be that player. And, you know, as a striker, it's kind of this... It's this kind of double-edged sword where to score goals, you kind of have to be in a position to miss, right? So you're not going to score every time you shoot. So you got to be ready to miss to score.
Yeah. Okay.
But for a long time, I was like, I don't want to miss. So I would kind of hold back and not put myself in those situations. But it was a bit of a cop-out because what I was scared of is failure.
Okay.
So it's like a penalty, right? Like if you take a penalty, you've got to be ready you might miss the penalty. But unless you step up and take it, you're not going to score.
Yeah.
So for a long time, I was like, oh, like, I don't really want to be that person. And I think when I got to the root of it, it was a fear of failure because I always wanted to be that person to succeed. It was like, it's a bit like being a perfectionist.
Yeah. And
not realizing that you're never going to actually achieve perfection. So just enjoy the journey and just try and do your best. So those moments, I think, for me, were probably where my mental health was the worst, where I just was so defined by scoring goals. And if I failed, I couldn't, like, you know, I'd get really down on myself or I didn't want to play. So when I then dealt with that, you know, I started seeing a sports psychologist, and the sports psychologist said to me, go back to how you were when you were a kid.
I love that reference.
So when I was a kid on the estate, running rings around the boys, I wasn't thinking. I didn't care. I was fearless. And so when I tapped back into that, that's when I started scoring goals for fun as a pro.
Oh wow, okay.
Because I was letting it go. And I think that applies to, you know, not just sport, but I think it applies to all areas of life. You know, if you're fearless, if you let go of what people think, if you just go for it, you will actually achieve more.
So it's like embracing your inner child, right? And just going back to that point where, like you said,
we all need to do that
on the block.
Yeah,
just playing.
I think we all need to do that more. I think we need to tap into. I mean, obviously, for me, I'm lucky to say that I had a really fun childhood, and as I said, my mom was very, you know, she didn't really put much restrictions on me in terms of my ability. So I have fun memories of my childhood, so I can tap into that. You know, not everybody has, you know, fun memories of their childhood, but I think that inner child piece is really important.
And how do you tap into that? You mentioned about, you know, you're able to tap into that early childhood memory. How do you do that? Is there a process?
For me, I think that handling fear is being able to say, what's the worst that can happen? That helped me. So the minute I get to the worst case scenario and I go, it's not going to kill me if this happens, it frees me.
Okay.
Because the fear is in what's going to happen. The fear is in, oh my God, if I lose, I'm going to look like an idiot. People are going to say, the press are going to write. And all these stories start coming into your head, and that then controls you. If I then say, so what if the press are going to write that I missed a penalty? So what? And, you know, and it's almost like you disregard it. That then allows you to just take it on head on. It's not easy. It's easier said than done. It took me years. Genuinely, it took me years.
And what were your teammates like? So, did you speak to them when you were feeling fearful, or you were feeling quite pressured?
No, so a lot of this was me, like, in my own head.
Okay.
You know, we also do a lot of fronting. We're very good at fronting as people.
Yeah.
So for me, as the sort of main striker at Chelsea, like, I always had to have it together. You know, I always fronted like I had it together, and, you know, I'm confident, and, you know, I did a lot of fake confidence, even though internally I was, you know, quite insecure in many ways.
And did that help? So putting up that fake confidence, I know internally you felt insecure, but when you were on the pitch, did that help you with your confidence in some way?
Well, on the pitch, I think, you know, like I said, I felt like in those moments when I was, you know, kind of going through that fear, I felt like I was holding back.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because when I let that go, I flew, like I was scoring so many goals. I think I mentioned it in the book where it's that sort of, it's that fearlessness. So when I look back, I go, imagine if I was fearless for longer, I would have, you know, I would have really. So I do feel like there's an element of holding back. But I think to my teammates, they probably wouldn't have known that because, again, I was very good at just like fronting
and going.
But I do think it's important to sometimes fake it till you make it, particularly if you're in environments where you feel like the odd one out. You know, I talk to a lot of women about imposter syndrome and that feeling of like, what am I doing here? You know, like, am I good enough to be here? And that self-talk of like, yes, you're good enough to be there, but it's also important to walk into a room and pretend, and like, not pretend, but walk into a room as if, I'm good enough to be here, because that energy influences other people. If you walk in apologetic and that's going to transmit to others. So I think it's also, and again, that's a practical tool. I think it's learning how to do that so that gradually you do feel like you deserve to be in the room. Even you do deserve to be in the room, but feeling that way is another thing, right? So, you know, that's also something I've practiced. It's like, you know,
how would you practice that? What are some tools that you could share on how you practice
again,
that?
I think it all starts from positive self-talk.
Okay.
You know, if you're telling yourself, I deserve to be here, you can walk in that way, you know. If you're telling yourself, I don't deserve to be here, that's going to come across in your body language. So I'm really big on like self-validation, positive self-talk. What stories are we telling ourselves? What are we writing down about ourselves, you know?
I think for me, what about the people who are telling themselves, because I get a lot of clients who will say to themselves, well, I'm telling myself these affirmations and, you know, I deserve to be here, I'm enough, but they don't believe it. It's almost as if they feel like they're faking it and they don't necessarily believe what they're saying. So for yourself, what would you...
Well, the only way you're going to be able to believe it is if you practice it enough.
Okay. Are there any did you have any actions to match what you were saying? So when you're saying, I deserve to be here, were you maybe dressing in a certain way, or was your body language in a certain way?
Yeah, I mean, it affects everything. The way you carry yourself, the way you dress, the way you talk, the way you respond. It all has an impact. But, you know, there's an element of like, is it fake? I don't know if it's faking it, but there's an element of like, that's what you have to do to get there.
To train, you've got to train your mind to become that person.
Yeah, it's a training. So, for example, you know, how you feel internally doesn't necessarily have to be what you put across to other people. So it's training that sense of keeping it together, keeping your internal emotion together. So you know, the amount of times I've been in situations. I'll give you an example. So I once had to meet with government over something quite serious. And I remember sitting in that room thinking, like, these are like powerful government people, you know, that are here for me, right? But I kind of remember feeling like, what am I gonna say that's gonna help them, you know? But the way I told myself, I was like, well, I have to make sure that I'm coming across as if I deserve to be here, like, and that impacted the other people in the room. I couldn't afford to be sat there thinking, what am I doing here? It you know, even though internally I was thinking, it was going off in my head. So you kind of have to like break through that niggling voice in your head that I think is in all human beings that says, what are you doing? You're not good enough. And break through that enough time so that you do say, well, no, I am good enough. That meeting went well, or that, you know, that conversation went well, or that test, whatever it might be. I think it's a practice.
Yeah, definitely. You speak about online bullying in your book. For those who are not aware or don't know what you have experienced, could you share with us some of the experiences you've had online?
Yeah, I mean, the online stuff is like, you know, it's the crazy world that we live in now, right? Where, you know, everybody has a platform to effectively say whatever they want. And, you know, there's access now to everyone. So if you're a public figure and you're somebody in the public eye, people attack you. You know, people feel like they have the option to say whatever they want about you.
They feel like they know you because they're so...
They feel like they know you, and they form very quick perceptions about you. So in the football world, where, you know, opinions are a big part of it, if I have an opinion that is, you know, new or unique, or someone might not have heard before, or someone disagrees with, it's fine to disagree. You know, it's fine to be like, I don't think that's right. The problem is how people communicate that. So people disagree. When people disagree, they think they can abuse you, right? When people disagree, they think they can attack your very essence of who you are, your race, my gender. But you know, so the lines have become really blurred.
Yeah.
Where,
and that's awful.
Me and you can disagree, but why can't we? You can disagree respectfully and say, Sharnade, I don't agree with that because of this, and you say, well, I agree with this point because of this, and it's a very normal civil conversation. Online, it's, I don't agree with her, so she's black black that. My race gets brought into it, my gender gets brought into it. People then death threats, and it's crazy. Like, it's really crazy. And I just think that it's happened because it's been an unregulated space for so long. Because when you think about in real life, if I'm walking down the street and I have an opinion about football, right, and someone hurls racist, sexist, misogynistic abuse, death threats at me, I'm calling the police. The police are coming to arrest that person.
Yeah, it's simple, yeah.
So it's about an unregulated space that has allowed the real worst, dark parts of human beings to come out. And unfortunately, for many of us as black women who are visible, it's kind of an easy space for people to attack us. So it's not been easy dealing with that and seeing some of the stuff that's written about you. And sometimes I'm actually like, it doesn't feel like it's me because it's so far from who I am that like these people are crazy. But the reality is that like I'm the kind of person, I'm like, okay, and I mentioned it earlier, this is a problem. What am I going to do about it? You know, I'm not going to sit there and feel sorry for myself. I'm going to try and do something about it. And I unfortunately, I have the platform to do that. So I think that, you know, hopefully there's going to be a lot of changes in the space of online abuse, a lot of regulation, consequences for people. I mean, I think people get it very twisted and think, I can say what I want, freedom of speech. Yeah, you can, but there's consequences for it. So when there's consequences built into society, that's when you have to think twice.
Yeah, about what you do.
About what you do. When you think twice about what you do, you probably are not going to say what you said, what you got away with saying before. You know?
Two things I want to touch on there. When you said you're very problem focused, so you focus on solving the problem.
Yeah.
And you don't sit in that emotion that you're experiencing. I think that's really important because I feel like for a lot of people, when they're struggling mentally, whether it be online abuse or whether it be abuse within their household or with friends, anything, I feel like sometimes people sit in that emotion that they're feeling and they ruminate on what's going on, or they overthink about what's going on, and they tend to attach meaning to them about what they're experiencing. So talk to me a bit about how you essentially detach yourself from what's going on and people's perception of you so that you don't sit in that emotion and kind of dwell on that.
Honestly, Sharnade, I think it's my faith, honestly.
I love that.
You know, I can't really give any other explanation other than like the faith, my faith, and the word says I'm God's child.
Amen.
And God's children are very special. They're not trash. They're not all the things that you see online. So that's my starting point. So if that's my starting point, although it's hard to read some of the stuff, it doesn't really get into the depths of my soul because there's something much deeper, as I was saying earlier. You know,
So
I'm rooted in something that makes me feel like a queen. I'm rooted in something that is omnipotent power, that is bigger than all of these idiots online. You know, and that has helped me a lot. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to feel it. It means that it doesn't, to your point, it doesn't make me sit in it.
Yeah. Okay.
There's something much deeper with much more substance. That means that if I see something online written about me and it upsets me in the moment, I get on my knees and pray, and I feel much better. I feel better within 5 minutes. You know, and so, I mean, I genuinely don't know how people live without faith. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because it's helped me so much, just being rooted in something that for thousands of years has been, you know, the redemption and savior for a lot of people's souls. There's obviously practical tools that you can do, but that's what's helped me personally.
Amen.
And
I love that.
I'm so grateful for it.
It's the truth. It's the truth.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that you can say, you know, if you see something online about you, you get down on your knees and you pray. Like.
Yeah. And even if I don't pray in that moment, it's knowing that it's contrary to what my truth is. It's contrary to what God says about me. It's contrary to what I feel about myself, you know, within God's kingdom. And I always think as well, like, you know, the people that God uses went through hell.
Even Jesus himself went through hell.
So how much more me?
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes, you know, some people have said to me, the level of opposition to you often dictates where you're going. You know, you might not be saying anything if people aren't reacting to it. So, and that doesn't mean I go out of my way to be controversial, but you know, if I'm not trying to do something impactful and powerful, you know, you should expect opposition. That's what the disciples went through.
No, it's very true. If you're not doing nothing, then you're not going to hear anything. But if you're doing, if you're on your mission,
no
then
one has changed the world without serious opposition. That's
a good way to look at it from a faith perspective as well.
You're not shifting anything. So, and again, it's not easy. It's not, you know, it's definitely an easier, more peaceful life to not have opposition. But I think that from the extent that I've chosen, and I feel I'm chosen, and I feel that God is using me in many ways, I have to be ready for that opposition, because it's been the same for all the people God uses.
Have you been to therapy before?
I have, but my so my issue with therapy, not issue, I think I've just always sometimes been left with something a little bit missing. So my thing with therapy is the practical side. So it's been really great for me to understand, like, where a lot of my insecurities stem from. So, you know, you mentioned it, single parent family. You know, my dad was away a lot. You know, not necessarily having a strong connection with my dad, which then impacts my relationship with men and how I view men and how I trust men. And so those links, like, have been really, really helpful, that a therapist has really kind of highlighted for me. And I think that then allows you to go, oh, okay, that's why I'm thinking the way I'm thinking, or okay, that's why I'm not trusting this situation. It's then like, okay, but what do I do? And often the therapists I've had have been great, but often they're like, no, you should be your own therapist. You should come up with the solutions yourself. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know what that is, right? So I think that I'm going to try another way, which is it like a life coach? Life coaching, which is a bit more in the now. Like, it's a bit more kind of, because I think therapy is quite reflective, and it's sometimes I leave therapy sessions quite heavy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but that's just me.
But yeah, everyone's had the experience with a therapist, and I have heard stories about.
So I don't want to leave therapy heavier than I do.
No,
that's
not how you should be feeling.
It's like you should be like going to a doctor and the finger's hurting me more. You're supposed to like, you know. So I go back and forth with it, but I'm quite open. Like, I'm quite open to I'm open to sort of practical things that will allow me to just be more conscious of my behavior or my thoughts, you know, obviously alongside my faith. Someone recommended breath work to me recently, and I thought, yeah, do you know what? As someone who trains, and, you know, I'm obviously training, and I'm into my fitness and health, and I thought, you know what? Because the way they explained it to me, she said, it's a very good friend of mine who, you know, has done a lot of work in this space, and she said that trauma is held within us.
The emotion.
And it's like you're holding your breath. So when you go through something, you actually, like, you tense up, and breath work just releases all of that. And I was like, wow, and it felt really practical, you know, in the way that when I train, I feel like it's really good for my mental health. And I feel like that could be, you know, that could be a good thing. And she said, you know, a lot of the time with breathwork, people release and they cry and the emotions just come pouring out, and you feel lighter as a result of that. So I think I might try it.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
I think I might try it.
We'll see. I have heard stories about people saying, you know, therapy they feel very heavy, or they don't feel like there's been a solution to their problem. But with therapy, that's what we're here for. As a psychotherapist myself, we're here to give you those solutions, and that's what we love, because it can't just be theory, it needs to be practical as well.
That's the thing, so. Like, but again, that's just my experience with the therapists I've had, who honestly, they've been great in, certainly when I'm thinking about my personal life, like, so my relationships, being able to kind of join the dots with that therapy's really helped me. But I'm just a very practical person.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
I kind of always need that solution-based, you know.
Thank you for
But
coming.
we can talk.
Yeah, we'll talk. Thank you for coming.
No, thank you for having
such a pleasure
me.
to have you here.
Thank you for the question.
What can we expect from you in the future?
Wow, that's a big question. Do you know what? I think just as an umbrella point, I think for me now, and we were talking about it off camera. But for me now, it's really about like owning my own work, owning my own intellectual property. You know, I've built my career on other people's platforms. You know, on TV. Obviously playing for teams as a footballer or whatever, but now I own a team, you know, which is massive, like for me to...
Incredible.
Yeah, like for me to, you know, invest in a women's team and be able to influence at that level. I see that for everyone. But we have to be smart, you know, we have to be really smart as a black community around the world. We have to be more collective thinking. We can't be individuals, you know, in our pursuit of things. So I'm constantly thinking about, okay, how can I have equity in this? How can I create a platform for others to join me? How can I be part of, you know, this collective? You know, these things for me, from a business perspective, are really important. And I think that's how we continue to progress as individuals and as a collective. So I'm constantly thinking about projects that are gonna, you know, I've just launched a scholarship at Brunel, my old uni. And that's gonna, again, you know, help sports scholars at the uni and also law students. So I studied law at Brunel. So I'm trying to, again, give back, but also how can I create impact so others can go on and do their thing, you know.
I love that. Incredible. Well, I wish you
yeah.
all the best in everything that you do. You're such an inspiration.
Thank you, Sharnade.
Such a powerful woman.
Thank you for having me. Finally, we did it.
I know.